I am to share this PPT entirely. So my request to all the officials are to just focus on the talk which I am now deliberating upon. Do not need to note down or take any pic of the screen. I am to just share after my presentation. I'll be sharing the presentation entirely, so you will get the all the notes, whatever is mentioned here. Secondly, whatever question arises directly on the slide, and if you feel that it is directly on the slide, you can ask me there and there. You can put your audio on, and I would also like if you put your video also on, and so that I can also visualize a person who is asking, and I can understand the query in a better way. If the issue is not directly on my slide, then I request you to park your question and you can ask me in the last 15-20 minutes, which we are to keep for the question answer sessions. So with this brief note, let me now begin with the subject allotted to me. I'm to deal with the export of services vis-a-vis intermediary services under our Indian GST law. In this, I'll be dealing with the conceptual understanding, and then I will deal also with the recent developments. I'll also deal with certain advanced rulings which has been pronounced by our state as well as other states on the subject. And also I'll be dealing with two important court rulings which has come recently. One in July 20 last year from the Gujarat High Court on the very subject, and recently last week on 9th of June by our Bombay High Court. So I'll be threadbare dealing with that, and that is very important. You will also like to listen to that. In my PPT, I mentioned at all places the complete citation, the provision, section, subsection, and the dates and everything, which I will not be speaking in my presentation. I try to explain you in a very simple and normal language. I tried to explain with some examples also. So please focus, be with me for the next 2 hours. And I know you are having worries of your offices, office work, routine, your time barring matters. Even work from home also has its own problems. I understand, but now for 2 hours, let us just focus on the subject. Even your deliberations, your questions to me in last 15 minutes will also enlighten me on some aspect which I might not have thought on, or I might not have referred to or spoken to. Of intermediary shall be the location of the supplier of service. So if I am a broker or agent of that foreign company, and if I supply my services to him, then the place of supply of this services will be treated as in India, my place only. That means what happens? The first condition, provider of service in India. Yes, I am in India. Location of the foreign person outside India. Yes, he is at foreign country. So I am in India, he is at foreign. Am I intermediary? Answer is yes, I am an agent of that foreign company. Then in that case, 13(8) applies, that saying that supply of my services to him will be treated as the location of my service at my place, that is India. Exports not taxable. Now we call it under GST law as exports zero rated. And this particular export of goods, we are all very well aware. So I am not dealing today with the export of goods, about how to prove the transaction, the goods going out of India to a place. It may be by air, by ship, or by land also. And we are all aware that what are the document of titles to be seen, the bill of lading, the airway bill, or we know that the crossing the customs frontiers and so on. Our focus today is on export of services. And let me tell you that we in last many years dealt with more for the goods taxation under the state law and the central sales tax law. But so far as services are concerned, we used to give deductions. We had works contracts wherein material and services both were involved. But we used to give the deduction for labor services. If there is some professional bill or commission bill, we did not go deep into that. So we are not well aware or versed with the taxability or non-taxability of services. And now we all know that in GDP, whatever tax on services ratio is day by day increasing as compared to the goods, because in last several years, we have made revenue out of the goods taxation, and the services we started of late, and that is also now contributing a lot to the exchequer. So the export of services, right? By now we all have read the provisions, but I'll be highlighting here the important aspect. Today what we are to focus that the services which I am rendering, is it an export of services, zero rated, or is it a service which I am having a foreign exchange raised on a foreign person, but yet not exports? And if it is not exports, then what? Taxable, what rate? So let me today try to explain you in detail about the services only, not about the goods, whether it is an export or whether it is taxable in India, how and when. So let us first see the definition of export of services given in IGST law, section 26. Export of services means supply of any service when the supplier is located outside India. Sorry, supplier is located in India, the recipient is located outside India. That means, say, if I am the service provider, I am in India, my service recipient is located outside India, and the place of supply of the service is outside India. We will focus today much more on this clause C, that how place of service of supply can be outside India or it can be inside India. The next condition is the payment for such services has been received in convertible foreign exchange or in Indian rupees wherever permitted by RBI, because for certain types of transactions with dealing with certain countries, neighboring countries, or so the RBI also permits that the export proceeds can be in Indian rupees as well. So wherever there is a permission, INR is accepted. Else, generally, it is convertible foreign exchange. The proceeds should be therein, US dollars or pounds or so. The next condition is the supplier and recipient of service are not merely establishment of a distinct person, as explained in section 8.1 of IGST law, explanation 1. I'll be dealing with separately particular term distinct person, but let me tell you that if, say, I am here, say X Limited is in Maharashtra, and I open my branch outside Maharashtra, outside India, say X Limited India, X Limited USA, I open my branch. And in such a scenario, when my supply of service to my branch happens, then this will never be treated as a export of services, because we are two distinct persons as understood under the GST law, and we are the establishment of the same organization. So I cannot export to my own self the services, even if it is to the other country. So let us just understand this at present, and threadbare will go in my future slides. Under the law, here the clause is the distinct person, and under GST law there is a concept called distinct person. Also there is a concept called related persons, and both the terms are separately used in the GST law. Meaning thereby, in this particular definition, we are concerned with the yeah, let all to be on mute.
सर प्लीज आपका अनम्यूट कीजिए, मैंने म्यूट ऑन किया. सगळ्यांना पुन्हा रिक्वेस्ट आहे की आपला माईक कृपया तपासा. परत परत हे दुसऱ्यांदा तिसऱ्यांदा झाले की माईक चालू आहे कोणाला तरी. सर प्लीज अनम्यूट युअरसेल्फ.
Okay, yeah, is it okay?
Sorry.
Yeah. 1 minute, let me now again start the PPT. Am I audible now?
Yes sir, yes sir.
Okay. Just putting the screen properly. Is it okay?
Yes sir, and extremely sorry sir.
No issue. Okay. So in our export of services, the terms used are distinct and related persons. So the term used here is only distinct person, not related person. So suppose I has told you that if X Limited Maharashtra and X Limited USA are the branches of each other, say HO is here and branch is there, I cannot export my services to a branch. But suppose X Limited is there and there is another Y Limited of say a related person. Then if I supply my service to Y Limited at USA, and if it is not a distinct person, I can export that. So my services to Y Limited will be treated as an export as understood under the definition. Another aspect, here there are 5 conditions and all the conditions must be satisfied. If any of the condition is broken, then I'm coming out of the transaction of the export of services, and then it will lead to other than exports, and then if it is taxable in India, in our state, it will be liable to tax. So what are the effect of this? The exports and deemed exports under the GST law treated as zero rated supplies as provided in section 16. Let me now take you through. So let us here understand the third clause properly. We all know that, say I am situated in India, my recipient of service is situated outside India. Fine, easily understood, easily possible to provide for, and the agreements also is possible to understand this. But the condition third, even foreign exchange is coming and we are not, it is not my branch. So all the 4 conditions are very easy to operate and understand. The important condition is the place of supply of services should be outside India. So is it that am I giving the services sitting here in India? I can understand how I export the goods. From me, the goods will go from here to another country. There will be custom clearance. In case of services, no custom clearance. In case of services, it can be verbal also. Somebody tells me that, okay, you give me your opinion. I give my opinion verbally. I charge say 1 lakh rupees fees. It is also transaction. It cannot be checked. It can be only checked by if there is some communication, some agreement, or maybe by invoice. or maybe by my receipts in my books of account or the bank account. So in case of services, there is no clearance from the customs. So how we say that the services are rendered in India, or is it an export of services? So we have to see a place of supply of services rules. And this particular rules are provided, or rather the conditions of all this is provided in section 13 as well as section 12. Section 12 of the IGST Act deals with the place of supply of services provisions if both the persons are in India, the supplier of service as well as recipient of service. Say I am in Maharashtra, I supply services to a person in Maharashtra, or I supply the services to a person in Gujarat. It is governed by section 12 of the IGST Act. And if the supplier of the service or the recipient of the service, if either of the person is outside India, then in that case we have to look to the section 13 provisions and not section 12 provisions. Meaning thereby, let us now focus on export side. This also covers import side also. So right now today, as we are to concern with the export of services, whether export or taxable in India. So let us focus on section 13 of IGST Act, and 13.2 provides that, which is a general rule, that the place of supply of service shall be the location of the recipient of service. And for specific services, there is a subsection 3 to 12, which provides that for specific services, it shall be the location of actual performance of the service, right? Let me give you an example here. Say I am here in India. Somebody else from a foreign country calls me and says that I want some view on a particular subject. And I give my opinion, I charge him the fees, and I receive the fees in foreign exchange. This service is covered by 13.2, that is a location of the recipient of services outside India. So as per 13.2, the place of supply of this service is also the location of the recipient of service who is at say USA. So I'm satisfying all the 5 conditions of section 2.6, which we referred to, and my services to him will be treated as export of services. The same services, if I render here in Maharashtra, I'll be charging CGST and SGST at the applicable rate depending upon the services and the service accounting code as per our taxable rates notification. And if I am to render my services to the other state person, then in that case it is my interstate supply of services. I'll be charging IGST instead of C and S. And in this manner, the first transaction which I give my services to the foreign person, a person situated at a foreign country, and this is covered by 13.2. I'll give one example of 13.3 or some specific services also. Suppose there is some construction of a property going on in Maharashtra state, and there is a engineer or architect services which is rendered qua that construction. Then in that case, rule section 13 doesn't apply. Why? Because I am also in India. My recipient of service is also located in India. The immovable property is also located in India. So I'll go back to section 12 of IGST Act. And I have to now consider that, okay, whether I have to apply general rule 13.2 or if my service is of a specific nature, then I have to go to subsection 3 to 12. And in that case, I have to see what is the provision and I apply the POS provision. Okay. There is another section 13.13. After 12, it says in order to prevent double taxation or non-taxation of a supply of service, or for uniform application of rules, the government shall have the power to notify description of services or circumstances in which the place of supply shall be the place of effective use and enjoyment of service. So even section 13 also gives power to the government that if because of some eventuality the service is going out of the tax net, then they can provide for. Or if some services because of its nature resulting in or leading to a double taxation, then to avoid that also a notification can be issued under. So the power is there. Let me now take you through what do we mean by intermediary services. An intermediary services is defined under section 213 of IGST Act like this. Intermediary means a broker or an agent or any other person by whatever name called who arranges or facilitates the supply of goods or services or both or securities between two or more persons. That means, say there are two persons and in between two persons I come in and I am appointed as an agent by say one person, or I am a broker between that two persons and I bring them together and the transaction happens. Then I am covered as an intermediary. Another example, suppose I am an agent of one company for supply of some goods or supply of some services, and I do that business on his behalf as an agent, then I am covered as an intermediary. And see, the general meaning of the term intermediary means between something. Intermediate. If two persons are fighting, somebody comes in between, he's an intermediary. Intermediate. Intermediating a person. Here it is an intermediary, a person who intermediates in a transaction. Which transaction? For arranging or facilitating the supply of goods or services. So there is a main supply from A to B, and in between A to B, C comes in as an agent and he falls into this category. So there is a main supply either of goods or services from A to B, and C comes in between as an agent and he is covered here. But it does not include a person who supplies it on his own account. So there is an exclusion from this particular definition that if, say, A is to supply some goods and services to B, then it is their main supply. And if, say, I am a broker, I contact that person that, okay, you want to sell the goods? He says yes. Then I say, I'll be charging you the brokerage. Fine. We document something, maybe by way of an email or maybe by way of an agreement. And he says, okay, I will give you 2% as commission. And then I start locating the buyers of this goods. And the transaction happens. Am I audible? Okay.
Yes, sir. Audible.
Okay. Yeah. So if A is to sell the goods to B, but as I am the broker, I contact A, and by virtue of my services to A, I locate B and say that now you supply. So A supplies to B and he gives me the commission. Sometimes the broker is from the buyer's side, say the B, and B says, okay, you get me some goods, I want it. So I locate the supplier. I also see to it that the goods or quality what he requires is matching. Also negotiate that, okay, the price should be not this, but this. And the transaction happens between A and B gives me brokerage. So here also I am an intermediary. Same way for the services also. Say somebody wants to give some services of any nature. Say a services can be of some personal services. And I say that, okay, you render this to him and I get my brokerage. Then, but if I give on my own, I give my services on my own. So let us take this example that I, as a chartered accountant, give the services to somebody. I give on my own. I'm not agent of somebody. So in that case, I will not be considered as agent or broker, and I'll be charging. Same way, suppose some person is very expert in his field and he is approached by a person that, okay, you give me the services, and he gives that services. He is not agent of that person, or he is not agent of any other person from whom finally the services will be procured. In that case, he is not an agent or broker in between, but they supply the services on their own account, right? We will consider this further as we go ahead in this presentation. Now, is this particular definition different than the earlier law? Answer is no. Earlier law also, Rule 2F of place of provision of service defined under the service tax era, and the similar definition was there. So finally, when some supply of goods or services is happening between two persons, that is the main supply, and I give my services as an agent or broker of either of them or maybe both of them, then I am an intermediary. So what happens? Here the term used is by whatever name called. And the definition starts with a broker or an agent or any other person by whatever name called. So what do we give the meaning to the term by whatever name called? By whatever name called, the principle of ejusdem generis applies here. And various Supreme Court verdicts are there. I've just mentioned here one of the verdict. Even it has been discussed and applied this principle in one of the appeal advance ruling of Maharashtra in case of Sabri travel. And it says that meaning to be given to a term which should be akin to the adjacent term used in that phraseology. Whatever is understood by that, a similar should be of that. And I'll come to this particular term by whatever name called means what. I'll take you through my presentation and I'll come back to this particular explanation. So it cannot mean any other thing, but you have to take a color from the earlier terms or the adjacent terms used in the same definition. So an agent or a broker or called in any other manner in the transaction. So this is the intermediary and the place of supply. So suppose I am an intermediary, I am an agent or a broker in between two persons to whom they have to supply the goods or services, and I am an agent or broker. In that case, I am in India. If I give some services as an agent, I am covered by intermediary, taxable. My services will not be treated as exports. Whatever $1 lakh per month I receive, or based on any transaction, I charge him the commission, say every month, and I receive some convertible foreign exchange. Also, it is not treated as exports. I am breaking this condition clause C, so I am coming into taxability. But in the earlier case which I gave you, say I am a consultant and I give my some advice to him. Somebody wants to know that, okay, what is the GST law? I give my advice. I'm not agent. My fees will be whatever received, export of services. Some expert person is there. He knows many things about the chemicals and everything. Or he is aware of that, yes, this particular location, this India, at this place, some goods are required. Somebody is to manufacture something at this plant and he'll be needing this particular raw material, or he'll need a particular type of, say, packing material. And some foreign person just inquires that, is there any somebody here market? I say, yes, I'm an expert. I know everything about the charging my fees. I charge him my fees in the sense I am not his agent. I am not agent of even that Indian person, but I am aware of the market. I am aware of the place or the person who requires something, even he is not contacting me. I am aware who is the supplier. He is not contacting me. I on my own go and contact this person's that yes, here is there. Now I'll charge you my fees. That fees may be lump sum or that fees may be a percentage of a transaction, right? And this is called as a fees. If somebody loosely calls it at commission, maybe then not a right term. But then this fees will be treated as exports if I receive from a foreign country, from a foreign person in convertible foreign exchange, export of service. So this is the difference between two types of services, what can be export and what can be intermediate. I know you may have many questions in your mind. Please park it. At the end of my session, I will discuss and I'll answer every question. Going further, now what is the effect that if it becomes intermediary services and not an exports, and in that case it is deemed as rendered in India, so not exports, so taxable in India, and I'll be falling in HSN 9997, a residuary category of taxability of services, which is 18%. If it is the total is 18%, I have to pay 18% on my this fees received to the exchequer. What happens then? Let us go further. Now, in a transaction of any supply, local, interstate, or exports, such transaction can be of goods. Such transaction can be of services. So the business happens across the world, across the places, across the persons. And when the business happens, the supply happens either of goods or of services, or in some cases both, the composite supply, what we understand under the law. So to happen a transaction, there will be number of persons. There can be 2 persons, there can be 5 persons or so. Or even in case of services. Without somebody's interaction, the supply cannot happen. Leave apart exports. So here I have just thought of some transactions. Let's say there is a foreign territory wherein say we are concerned with F1, foreign company 1, F2, and in Indian territory there are say these 5 persons, let us think of, and A, B, C, D, E are there, and there is only one product to be manufactured. To manufacture that product, there will be say many raw materials will be needed, say 5-10 raw materials. Machineries will be needed. Packing materials will be needed, and then service providers will be needed to manufacture these goods, to pack these goods. The goods are ready now to be marketed, to be finally supplied. So complexity of transaction happens of supplies of goods and services across. One transaction, manufacture of some particular chemical or say a vehicle manufacturing. How many number of parts will be there? Some small manufacturers supply one part goes, tire goes, and so on. So let us think that A, B, C, D, E are there in a transaction in business. So let us start from E, the last in the chain. So E supplies something to D, E supplies something to C. The arrow also shows like that. So when E supplies say goods, supplies services to D and C, his revenue is there. As per GST law, supply of goods, taxable, whatever it is, we are all in India. If D is outside the state, I'll be charging IGST and so on. If he is in Maharashtra, I'll be charging C and S. Now, after the E completes his supply, he does something further. D now supplies to C. Now, when D supplies something to C, he might have done something, whatever he received from E, he might have used his own services, his own machinery, supplies finally to C. Then C is also importing something from F2. See, the arrow is coming from F2 to C. So F2, some goods are imported by C or some services are imported by C. Say technical know-how is taken by C from F2. So it is import of services. He will pay IGST, take the input tax credit as applicable and available under the GST law. So finally, C gets something from E, something from D, something from B, and finally he supplies to A. And A supplies this very say goods or say the services to F1 at foreign country. Now, will you call this every person as agent and broker of everybody? Answer is no. Then to be a broker and agent, is it that to be some arrangement? Yes. Is it under the law? Yes. Which law? Contract law. Can there be an agreement? Yes. Can there be verbal agreement? Yes. But people have written agreements because if the other person do not fulfill his particular promise, then a legal suit is to be filed, and without document, what I'll put before the court. So there are certain agreements. The agreements can be in any format, can be a contract, it can be a lump sum, one contract executed for applicable for or effective for say next 3 years, 5 years, or a mother agreement, and then based on that agreement some orders flow and all that. Some communications may be there, and now email is also accepted as a real source of a document, and it is a valid piece of the evidence of a written thing. So finally A supplies to F1. Or even in our second example, B also supplies something to F2. Now, can you call to complete a transaction or to complete something, say something is to be manufactured, something is to be then supplied. Let us take a case that A got an order from F1 that you supply me vehicles, you supply me say tires, you supply me say drugs, medicines, and A then approaches C, approaches D, approaches E, and says that okay, I need now, I have to manufacture this medical medicines and drugs, and you supply me some raw material, these that. Says okay, what? Okay, the order is from USA or UK. There are some particular requirement of that local laws that no, you cannot use this particular type of chemical, or you have to use only this type of chemical. I know that at some foreign countries, whenever they import some garments or so, they say that the cotton should be of this category, only from that manufactured a fabric, and you'll use only that fabric. Egyptian cotton or Indian cotton or so. So they have some requirements. So to fulfill that requirement, A tells the say D to or C that okay, I need this. Would you call it as intermediary? Answer is obviously no. There is no agency relation between these two persons. To do a business, persons are required. Even if I want to go somewhere and I will ask a person that can you tell me which at which place this is located, how to go to that place, how to reach to that location. Does he become intermediary? Answer is no. Same way, I can ask somebody that I want this particular goods, this medicines is not available here. Is it available? Where do you have any? He says yes, yes, in this location this medicine is available. Is it that he becomes my agent? For rendering me these services, I may pay him something. Or say that to complete a transaction, to conclude this, many chain of events and transaction happens between many persons. Is it an intermediary or not? Or is it a normal general supply from one principal to another P2P basis? We have to see that. And the supplies can be of services or goods, now no distinction. Well, let me from this only take another example. Say A is an agent of F1. F1 has appointed A as Indian agent, and he tells me that whatever chemical I'll require, I'll tell you, I'll place order as you say that, okay, D is better or C is better or E is better, whose goods are better quality, whose prices are the lowest, and I will import from that person. So I search that, okay, C, D or E or B, who is proper, and I then say to F1 that, okay, E is better. So F1 will place an order of import on E. E will export the goods to F1 and F1 will give me the commission. I'm an agent, I'm an intermediary, I'm a broker, I'm an agent of F1 to procure the goods. And in this scenario, in the first scenario, say A supplied the services, not intermediary, export of services. But in the second transaction, as is an agent of F1, he supplies now the same services. He becomes a agent, and by virtue of his becoming intermediary, clause C is broken. His services, he will be treated as intermediary services. Whatever he receives will be liable to Indian GST. Let me take you further. Now this particular tells me about intermediary. The term itself says intermediary between two persons, two transactions, or say an agent or a broker. So here there is one, in this three circles are moving, and in this circle, Indian intermediary or agent or broker of a foreign party. So to get something, the foreign company from Indian supplier, he takes the services of the Indian agent, and by virtue of which the transaction will happen, the goods will be supplied directly by Indian supplier to foreigner, but I will get a commission, in that case intermediary. Or say Indian person wants something, I am an agent of Indian person and he imports something. If Indian person pays me, section 13 does not apply, it is my local transaction. But if I am an agent of foreign party, Indian person says that I want certain goods, I contact my foreign party that now this person requires the goods. The foreign party, foreign enterprise will supply the goods to Indian importer directly, but he gives me the commission. It is nothing but I am an intermediary. So in this manner, the role of intermediary or an agent or broker is crucial. The relationship is crucial, and by virtue of which, even if he earns the foreign exchange by rendering his services, is not an export of services as provided under GST law, liable to tax. Let me take you through further some definitions. The distinct persons under the GST law. See, the term distinct person is used in export definition, that if it's an establishment of the same, they are called as distinct person, but of one company, but establishment of is there of the same company, then it is not export of services. Goods will be there, so not export of services. So what this means? Before going to this definition, let me tell you, in general law, if I appoint agent, I supply something goods to him, it is not a sale, but the GST law deems it as a supply between two distinct persons. Though he is my agent, I am not to get any money today. After selling those goods which I have supplied to him, he will be selling further in the market and get the proceeds, and then out of that proceeds, he will reduce certain expenses as agreed between us. He will reduce his commission also as agreed between us, and then final proceeds he will give me. Or say everyday transaction happens, everyday proceeds. may directly come from that customer to me, not through that agent, but every month or every 3 months, as per our understanding, as per the agreement, he will raise a debit note on me for the commission of the transactions happened because he is my agent. So under general law, not a sale, but under GST law, a supply between these two persons happen, agent and principal, distinct persons. So let me now take you through this distinct person definition. Distinct person means a person who is obtained or is required to obtain more than one registration either in one state or even in more than one state, then each such registration shall be treated as distinct persons. That means suppose I am in Bombay, I open some business at Pune and some business as in Nasik, and in that case I don't need under the law a separate registration. I am in Maharashtra only. I have single registration. If I supply from Bombay to Pune or Nasik any goods or services, it is not a supply because that is my branch, and under single PAN, under single registration of GST, we all operate. So in between us, within the state, no supply of goods or services, not taxable. If my branch sells to somebody else at a consideration, taxable in the hands of the branch, but as common GST number, so a tax will be paid on that. But I have a branch outside the state. Say in Ahmedabad or Baroda or Delhi, the law requires me that when you are having your branch at other state, carries on business, in that case I have to see the turnover of entire, and if it crosses a particular limit of threshold, say 20 lakhs or so in a year, I have to obtain registration. So I have to obtain registration for Maharashtra, I have to obtain registration for Delhi or Ahmedabad branch. So in that case, a person who has obtained in Maharashtra, I have not obtained, so not a separate person, not a distinct person. But say in Maharashtra, I also take separate registration for Pune and Nasik. Then by virtue of this particular definition, all the three units may be of one single PAN, but three are different persons under the GST law, termed as distinct persons for the GST law. So any transaction happening of supply of goods or services inter se, I supply to Nasik, Nasik supplies to Pune, or Pune supplies to me at Mumbai, everything will be between different persons, distinct persons, taxable under the GST law as if a separate person. Or so if I have to take registration, separate distinct person. If I obtain, even if not required under the law, distinct person. And the next clause says where a person who has obtained or is required to obtain registration in a state has an establishment in another state, then such establishment shall be treated as establishment of distinct persons. The second clause says that if I am in Mumbai, I am say registered here in Mumbai, but I just have my one office at say Delhi, and which does not do any activity, so may not be required for registration also under the GST law. But the law says that is your establishment at other state, you are here, so you both will be treated as under the GST law. It will not get input tax credit of this tax which I have paid here as IGST, and my branch will lose the input tax credit. So generally people takes the registration at the other state also if huge amount of ITC may be happening in their hands, and one establishment pays and the other establishment eligible for ITC. So having understood this distinct person concept, so the principal agent, separate person, distinct person, registration is required, supply happening between inter se taxable. We have schedule 1 annexed to the CGST law, which says there is no consideration when I supply goods to my agent. No consideration, yet it will be treated as a supply and a tax will be there on the value of that particular supply. What do we mean by establishment? Now we going further, the law also uses the term establishment. So is establishment a place of business? Or is there any difference between these two terms? Answer is yes. We all know that place of business is defined like our under earlier VAT law, a place from where the business is ordinarily carried on, a godown, a warehouse, where a person stores his goods. So any place where a person receives the goods or services or supplies the goods or services from, that place is a place of business. One has to take a registration qua that place. There can be additional places. If he opts to take separate registration, he can take, the law does not debar. A place where he maintains the books of account is also a place of business. A place where a person is engaged in business through an agent. So agent's place is also a place of business for me. And there also the term uses by agent by whatever name called, right? So second time now we are referring the term whatever name called. Let us park this. A fixed establishment is defined under the GST law to mean other than registered place of business. That means my place of business is registered, fixed establishment may not be registered. If it is registered, already a distinct person, as we understood in the earlier definition of distinct person. But even if some establishment is there which is not registered or which is not required to be registered, yet that can be an establishment. Under the income tax law, it is generally referred as a permanent establishment. Under our GST law, it is said as a fixed establishment. What do we mean by that? Other than a registered place, which is characterized by a sufficient degree of permanence and suitable structure in terms of human and technical resources to supply services or to receive and use services for its own needs. So this is only for the services. This fixed establishment term is used and defined. So there is a particular office, working is going on over there, human talent is also available, some technical resources are also available, maybe to receive the services at that place or for its own need, or maybe services are supplied from that place is also treated as an establishment of that person, and he may take registration under the law if required, he has to take. So this is the establishment. Now establishment of distinct person as defined in explanation 1 of section 8. Export definition says that if the supply of service happens from one person here in India to a foreign person outside India, but if it is the establishment of that same person, correct, which are treated as distinct person under GST law, yet that will not be treated as export. So if to my own branch I am supplying some services at foreign country, no exports. But if I am having a subsidiary at foreign country, supply separate person, they are not distinct persons. So explanation 1 says where a person has an establishment in India and any other establishment outside India. So a same owner, single pan, having one establishment in India and the other establishment outside India, that means generally we in loose term we call it as a own branch. And then any supply of services happens from me to that branch, though I receive say foreign currency from that branch, it is not exports. Those agent means a person including a factor, broker, commission agent, Aratya, Del creditor agent, an auctioneer or any other mercantile agent. Now here they have said by whatever name called. So by whatever name called goes with the term agent means a person. So agent means a person by whatever name called, say maybe called as a factor or a broker or a commission agent or Aratia or Del Crede. That means either of any of the term is used, or maybe say this term you bring it and use, but you will be treated as agent as long as this particular term. But who is this person? The person who carries on the business on behalf of another. So if a person is appointed to carry on business on behalf of somebody else, that person is an agent. And this business of what? Supply or receipt of goods and services. So that means somebody appoints agent, somebody appoints broker, somebody appoints commission agent, by whatever name called, is an agent. And this category of person, this type of relation between a person and this agent is treated as a intermediary. So now you can think of what service is rendered by a person having a relationship as an agent and giving services without any relationship, then it is called as on his own, supply on his own, which is excluded from intermediary. And this is the way we have to look at it. Even if you refer circular of September 18 and November 18, though it is given qua the principal agent relationship in the context of Schedule 1 for no consideration yet a supply of the goods, whatever is there. But this gives some hint and idea even for understanding. That particular circular also uses the Indian Contract Act definition of the term agent, and agent is a person employed to do any act for another or to represent another in dealings with the third person. The same way here, put up here, see in our definition we say carries on business on behalf of another. So the terminology of the agent definition picked up from the Contract Act, and that agent is taken in the intermediary definition also. So we can come to some pure understanding that what can be the agent. This is section 188 says a extent of agent authority. An agent having an authority to do an act has authority to do every lawful thing which is necessary in order to do that act. So I appoint somebody to purchase particular chemical, and for that, say he does anything. So even he is agent for doing that anything, because he has to now supply me that chemical, which is the primary authority given to him. So to satisfy the primary authority, he does anything is also agency. Okay. Under the law, what do we mean by recipient of goods and services? And very important definition, recipient of supply of goods or services means where a consideration is payable, the person who is liable to pay the consideration. Let us pause here. Say I take my child to a barber and I tell him that, okay, haircut is required. The barber accepts that and says that, okay, you'll have to pay 100 rupees for this. I say yes. So here there are three persons involved, but who gives the services to him? Who receives the services? Who is the consideration? Who is the recipient of the service? So in our example, barber really cuts the hair of the child. So the beneficiary of the services is that child. But who agrees to pay? I agree to pay. Meaning thereby, I am the recipient of service. So I tell the barber that, okay, you cut the hair. So I order him. The contract happens between me and him. And by virtue of this contract, I agree to pay consideration and he agrees to give me the services. But the beneficiary of services can be a third person. So this is the, in this transaction, who is the recipient of services? Recipient of services is me, because I agree to pay the consideration, not that person. So under the law, even in consideration definition, it is said that even if you supply some goods or services to A, B pays for that. That is also by consideration. But for this supply, though the goods are supplied to A, though the services are supplied to A, the consideration is received from B. It is my consideration, but who is the recipient of the goods or services in this transaction? It is B, not A. Practically, the goods are received by A, but under the law, the recipient of goods or services is B. That means B is eligible for input tax credit, not A. Though A has received the goods and services, under the law it is deemed as B has received the goods and services. Then whatever is the understanding between A and B, he may raise an invoice on A or he may not raise invoice. That is their understanding. So where no consideration is there, if I sell goods to somebody, whom I have delivered is the recipient of goods. If I supply some services, no consideration is involved. To whom I have rendered the services, that is the person recipient of these services. And finally, it says recipient of supply shall include an agent acting as such on behalf of the recipient. So if I am giving some goods or services to somebody who is an agent of somebody, then the recipient of the supply includes that agent also, because he accepts that goods or services on behalf of another person. So in meaning thereby, why we have to look to this particular definition, because if I render the services sitting in India to a foreign person and foreign person agrees to pay me something, then the recipient of services is outside India. And if I am not the agent, I am not the broker, then my services to him will be treated as export of services, satisfying all 5 conditions of exports. If yes, then my proceeds will be treated as export proceeds for the supply of that services and will be treated as zero rated, not taxable, else taxable in India. As I said, the term used in section of exports or in intermediary is a distinct